Akadosh Boker or Masechet Bava Kamma Daf Chet Amud Aleph 78a1. We are talking about right now when it says the Rabbi comes and he speaks about Minyane Dekra, and each one is Minyane Dekra, which means that the word O could either mean a ribui or it could mean a miut. And therefore it comes and it says by Geneva that it says Shor Ose, that you cannot take out, there's no mitziut to make a kilaim between a shor and a say. You cannot have babies out of them. So therefore the word O is leravot kilaim. But by kodshim, that it's written kesevez, that you could take out kilaim between them, which means that you can make kilaim between them. So the word O is lemaetu, right? Veha gabe kodshim, right? Ayin chet amud aleph, yeah? By kodshim, it says shor o chesef, she'enat yochol lotzi kilaim benehem. It says 1 second, but by kodshim, it says shor o chesef. You cannot be motzi kilaim benehem because they cannot have children from each other, the shor o chesef, un Rabbi. And we're going to come and we're going to add on, meaning, al tagili, don't tell me that the word o, talui. Im ata yochol leotzi kilaim, ze lerabot. Im ata lo yochol leotzi kilaim, ze lemaet. It's not true. Here, you cannot be motzi kilaim, and it's still lerabot. So don't tell me it's yeah. So answers the Gemara, you're right. Which means we had the general rule. The general rule is that if you cannot be motzi kilaim, it's lemaet, and if you could be motzi kilaim, it's lerabot. He comes and he says no, but here since the seifa was lemaet, the reisha is also lemaet, even though technically it should be lerabot. Okay, so actually it says the Gemara hadraba. Why are you telling me since the seifa lemaet, reisha lemaet? Maybe since the seifa is lerabot, since the reisha is lerabot, the seifa is lerabot. Adraba, midreisha lerabot, seifa na midrabot. Answers the Gemara, hi mai. So what are you going to say that? I understand lemaet. You need two mutes, meaning when you want to exclude lemaet zel exclude leotzimi mashu. So you have two mutes. The afal gav the miet kelaim, because even though there's already a mute of kilaim from the word o, itzich lemute nidme, you still have to be, there's another o, right, to be also lemute. Okay, but if you're going to tell me lerabot, why do you need two different lerabots? Why do you need two different of the ribuis? Hashta kilaim and bale, if we already included kilaim, nidme mi baye. So now you're going to say something which is compared to it. You have a question? What is kilaim? יש לך two breeds, שתי דברים שונים, אתה שם אותם יחד. ואז אתה עושה kilaim. So if the Torah is already lirabot at the kilaim, שזה שתי דברים נפרדים, two different things, וזה מרבה את זה, קל וחומר שזה מרבה משהו דומה, קל וחומר. But if you're going to tell me it's למעט, it's something completely different. אלא הדה רבא, but rather that which Rava says, זה בנאיו, שכל מקום שנאמר se, אינו אלא להוציא את הכיליים. But rather it's a binyanav. What's a binyanav? Anytime that it says the word se, it's coming להוציא את הכיליים. It's coming to exclude the kilיים. למה הלכתה? What is it? What do you mean coming to exclude kilיים? אילה קודשים, if you're going to tell me that you cannot bring kilיים as קודשים, בהד יכתיבו, it's written מפורש. שור או חסב. שור או חסב פרט לכיליים. You cannot bring kilיים to the בית המקדש. It's either shor or chesed. Ile maaser, if you're going to tell me it's for maaser, tachat yaliv mikotshim. You learn a gzera shava when it says son v'chol maaser b'kavatzon, so therefore you cannot bring kilaim, which means maaser be'ema, they learn from the korbanot as a gzera shava, tachat. So therefore, since they're learning it like that, so obviously you can bring kilaim. Ile bechor, if it's talking about the din of a be'ema, bechor be'ema teorah, so he says havara yalif maaser. They learn a gzera shava where it says over there, writing shoyim se havara, right? So he says over there, the bechor be'ema teorah. They learn from maaser be'ema gzera shava lashon havara, which is written. That means just like there's no kilaim part of the maaser be'ema, so too there's no kilaim in the part of bechor be'ema. Inami, or you could also say nidme amarta lo. You told me in nidme that you can't say that. Dichtiv ach bechor shor. Ad shehu shor or bechor shor. You need both the animals to be the same in order to be chayav in bechor, right? So he says kilaim mibayis. So then it's So if you cannot be a Bechor, so it's obviously not going to be Kilaim also. That means, what's the Safek by Kilaim? There's no Din Bechor. There's no... So what? Now you have to tell me that by Kilaim, maybe there is a Din Bechor? For sure not. Just like it was a shor, the child has to be a shor. And if the child's not a shor, and the mother's the thing is a shor, so therefore obviously you're not going to have Kilaim, you're not going to have Bechor. Elakitmar, the Rava, well, that was when Rava comes and he says, Binyan Peter Chamor. What does that mean? Let's see. It's that we learned in the Mishnah. En podin, we're not allowed to redeem Peter Chamor, lo be'egel velo bechaya. Not with an egel, or not with a chaya. Okay? So even if it's going to be a chayat teorah, for example, a tzvi, a deer, or an ayal, or you're not allowed to. Velo b'shchuta, velo betrefa. Not in a shchuta, or not a trefa. You cannot redeem the chamor with an animal which was already slaughtered, or an animal which is a trefa. Velo b'kilaim, or the kilaim, velo b'koi. If you remember, the koi was an animal which comes from a taish v'tzvi. It's like from the goat and the deer. It's like a crossbreed. So therefore, the concept that we say that you cannot do kilaim kasher for pidyon petach hamor is from the concept that it says that there's no kilaim bichlal. So says the Gemara, ul Rabbi Lazar de matir b'kilaim. According to Rabbi Lazar, that he's going to be matir b'kilaim. The Tanam, as we learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Lazar matir b'kilaim mipnei shu se. Rabbi Lazar is going to be matir b'kilaim because it's a se. L'may hilchata. Yeah, what is this halacha? So Amalecha Rabbi Lazar says Rabbi Lazar ki itmar de Rava, right? He says when Rava was stated letameh shenola min tahor v'iburo min tameh, to do the tameh which was born from a tahor v'iburo min tameh, and it became pregnant from the tameh. Okay, which means you have a behema, which is something which is a sur ba'achila, that gave birth from another behema muteret ba'achila, so became prohibited from the behema surah. For example, sus that came from a para that had a child from a sus, or a chazir, right, came from a rachel that was nitabra mechazir. So the drasha of Rava is that by the behema, which is matirim ba'achila se, and kilaim is not, there's no kilaim which is part of the seter. So you cannot have a sus that came from a para, sheitabra mi sus, or you cannot have a chazir sheitabra mi rachel, sheitabra mi chazir. Udelo Rabbi Yoshua, and not like Rabbi Yoshua. Dik Rabbi Yoshua, but if you're going to tell me it's like Rabbi Yoshua, he says savim seizim nafkale. He learns it from Masechet savim seizim. Ad she'aviv keves v'imo kivsa. Meaning, you always say that it has to be the same thing. That means both the mother and the father have to be the same breed. And then that's what's going to happen with the child. So that's where Rabbi Yoshua learns it from. Uteora mitmea mimeabra. He says what? But a behema teora could become pregnant from the behema tmea. He says, yes. The kaimalan, because we paskin. Ein chet amubet. Diabar mikalut kirbi Shimon. That it became pregnant from a kalut, from a behema that has parsot klutot, not stukot. Yeah? And that's like the shita of Rabbi Shimon, that he says that a behema kluta is tameh. Okay? So that's going to be tameh. Okay? Fine. So by Rava, so Rava is now going to ask, Hare alai olah. Imagine a person comes and he says he has to bring a korban olah. He frees shor. So he separates a shor. Uba acher veganav, somebody else comes and he steals the shor. Mipatre ganav nafshe bekeves l'Rabbanan? Are you going to tell me that according to this shita, he could just bring a keves? Right? Or be'olat ha'of, or just bring an olat ha'of, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah? How does that work? Obviously not. Because technically speaking, you could bring a korban olah from a keves, right? Or from a olat ha'of. So now what? That means the ganav is going to say, okay, fine. You had a korban olah, I'll bring you the korban olah. He brings you a bird. The cost of the bird and the cost of the shor, shamayim v'aretz. Yeah, that's what you want to do. Yeah? Exactly. The Tanam, as we learned in the Mishnah, Hare alai olai, yavi keves. Elazar ben Azariah omer, no, yavi Torah ben Yonah. So what's the halacha? Ni amrina, do we say Shem olah kabil lave, that he only accepted upon himself the name of the olah? Or he could say, Ana mitzvah min muvchar min bein al-mevad. I wanted to do mitzvah min muvchar, and therefore, since I wanted to do the mitzvah min muvchar, so therefore that's why this happens. So says the Gemara, Batar de Ibaya, after he asked the question, Hadar Pashta, he answered it. Ganav patar atzmo bekeves l'Rabbanan ve'olat ha'of. You're right. Inachanami, meaning According, after he asked the question, Rav asked the question, he answered it. According to Shitat Rabbanan, the guy stole a shore, he could bring a kevis. The guy stole a shore, he could bring, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Ola Taof. He could do that. Why? He only stole the Ola, so he's giving back on Ola. You chose the Mitzvah Mivchar. Doesn't matter. The Ola. Ravacha bered Ravi Kamatz Behedia. Ravacha bered Ravi Kashi learned it explicitly, right? Where he says, Amar Rava says, Hare alai Ola v'ifri shor, uba acher u'minavo patar atzmo bekeves Rabbanan u'balat of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. So he says, Ravacha bered Ravi Kashi learned it explicitly in the Braita. Not that he said it from Svara. He learned it explicitly in the Braita. It was the Braita that says this. And therefore, that's how he's going to come, and he's going to be Yitzhak Chuvah. Okay? Says the Mishnah. Okay? Mishnah says, right? We're talking about now somebody that steals a shor oseh, umcharo chutz me'echad mitame shebo, o shayta lo bo shutafut. So imagine somebody steals a shor oseh, and he sells it, except for one chelek of 100, right? Except for chelek echad mimea, right? Or shayta lo bo shutafut. He had a shutafut, yeah, and therefore, even though he sold the entire thing, right? It wasn't, Torah Mechilat Isur, right? Fine. Next case, Hashochet, somebody that's going to be Shochet, Venitnabla biyado, and it became a nevela in his hand. Yeah, Ve'anocher, or he kills an animal by tearing it, right, until the heart. Ve'me'aker, or he killed an animal through tearing out the kanav veshet. Meshalem tashlum ekef. So in all these cases, even though he keilu, he didn't do a kosher shchita, obviously, but he killed the animal. It doesn't matter. In these cases, he only pays kefel, but he does not pay arba v'chamisha. Okay? Makes sense, no? Meaning arba v'chamisha is only if he does a real tvicha. If he doesn't do a real tvicha, nothing. Says the Gemara, Mai chutz me'echad mimea shebo. What does it mean now that the Mishnah says that you're only going to come and you're going to, on the chelik of the bema that we're talking about, that if you're going to leave it over, it's except for the one of 100th. So Rav says, chutz mi davar nitar imo b'shchita, except for part of the body, which the shchita is going to actually have a falah. So for example, you actually come and you said, part of it is, you're going to come, you were shier mitocha mechira, let's say the or the kanaim, or the tzemer, which is something which the shchita does not prohibit, right? And therefore, that's why he says, it's not going to be poter otcha, mitashumei arba v'chamisha, meaning like this. If you come and you say, okay, I'm selling, but except for the or, now you do the shchita doesn't have nothing to do with the or, right? Even with the or, without the, it doesn't matter, right? It's zelo kashur, the karnaim, zelo kashur shchita to the karnaim, zelo kashur shchita to, so he says, v'levi amar, Levi says, chutz migizotea, except for the tzemer, which is on top of it. And that's what it means. So it comes out that if you come and you sold it, except for the tzemer she'alea, right, which is a gizotea, okay, so therefore you're going to be poter the ganav from arba v'chamisha, and that's what we learned also in the mitzvah and the Braita, chutz migizotea. So meitvei, so they're going to ask the following question: mechara, if you sell the ganav comes and he sells it except for the hand or the foot or the keren or gizotea, eno meshalem tashumei arba v'chamisha. You don't have to pay 4 and 5 times. Rabbi comes and he says, Davar me'akev v'shchita, if it's me'akev the shchita, eno meshalem tashumei, you don't have to pay, right? But if it's eno meshalem she'eno me'akev v'shchita, but if it's not going to be me'akev the shchita, meshalem tashumei arba v'chamisha, you are going to have to pay the arba v'chamisha. Shimon ben Elazar says, chutz mikarna eno meshalem tashumei, except for the keren, it's not going to pay arba v'chamisha. Chutz mi gizotea, except for the gizotea, you are going to pay tashumei arba'a v'chamisha. So says the Gemara, bishlama levi. I understand according to Levi, right? He holds like Tana Kama the Braita, meaning according to Shitat Levi, even if you left over just the shearings of the wool, the gizot of the wool, right, except for the mechila, you're going to be patur from arba'a v'chamisha. So that's like Tana Kama. But according to Rav, who does he go like? Right? It's not like the Tana Kama. And it's not Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. And it's, so who does he go like? So Amri, they said, Rav Damar Kaitan, Rav holds like this Tana, the telling him he's going to write Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Mechara chutz mi'yada, chutz mi'raglar, meshalem tashumei arba v'chamisha, chutz mi'karna, chutz mi'gizotea, meshalem. So here, this Tana is actually saying, if you're selling the animal except for the regel, right, or the hand, so you don't pay that arba v'chamisha. But if you do it except for the horns, or the gizot, you do pay tashumei chamisha. So you see that this Tana holds that shiur is poter mitashumei arba v'chamisha is anything which is going to be permitting in the shchita, which is going to be the hands and the feet. Okay? So b'ma'ka mipageh, what is machlok between them? Tana Kamma savar utvacho kulo bainan. When he says utvacho, you have to do tvicha, and that means in order to be chayav arba v'chamisha, you have to slaughter it in a way that the entire thing was prohibited, and now it's going to be permitted. Umcharo kulo bainan, when you're selling it, the entire thing has to be sold. But Rabbi says no. Udvacho zemidi dehavi betvicha. It's like tvicha. Le'apuk emidi dehavi betvicha. This comes to exclude something which was not on the tvicha. Umcharo dubia betvicha, and the selling it has to be like the slaughtering of it. Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar, and according to Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar, he holds that karna de lo lemizga kaima, that we're talking about a keren, which is not like to cut off, and therefore it's considered a shiur, and therefore you're not going to pay tashumei arba v'chamisha, but gizotea, that you always do cut off the shearings of the wool, it's not considered shiur, and therefore you do pay arba v'chamisha. Okay. So Savar, they hold Yadav v'raglav detzrichet tvicha, the hands and the feet are needed for tvicha, so that's considered, meaning it's needed for the shchita, meaning if you wanted to eat the hands and the feet, you need shchita to permit the hands and the feet. So have a shiur, so that's considered shiur, right? V'lo meshalem tashumei arba v'chamisha, you don't have to pay arba v'chamisha. But the horns, karneha, the gizotea, and the shearings, the lo tzrichet tvicha, they do not need tvicha, lo have a shiur, it's not a shiur. So says the Gemara, Kasha de Rabbi Shimon Lazar. One say you have a stira, Rabbi Shimon Lazar. Why? Because you're coming and you're telling me that there's a stira in the two different shitot of Rabbi Shimon Lazar. Does he have to pay tashumei arba v'chamisha or not? So answers the Gemara, a very famous answer that we keep on saying. You're right. There are two Tanaim in the shita of Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar. Now we're starting like a new thing. Tanu Rabbanan. Okay, so we're three quarters down. Tanu Rabbanan. It's the second word on the line. If you go from the bottom, no, Mordechai, how many lines up? 12, 14, around 14 lines up. Okay, Tanu Rabbanan. Hagonev hakita'at vetahigeret. Somebody that steals a behema, which is kituat regel, which means does not have a foot. Or it's a chigeret, it's lame. Or the suma, right, blind animal. Or if you steal an animal which belongs to partners, you're going to be chayav tashumei arba v'chamisha if you sold it or you slaughtered it. The shutafim sheganvu, but if they both stole it, meaning that they're partners that they steal, they're going to be pturim. So says the Gemara, why? We learned that if shutfim steal, why in the world are you going to be patur? Why? Because you steal in a partnership, are you going to be patur from 4 and 5? Why? We learned that you're going to be chayav. Amrav Nachman lakashia. Kan b'shutav sheganav mechavero. Here we're talking about the shutaf that stole it from his friend. The kan b'shutav sheganav me'alma. And the other one was a shutaf that you stole from in general. Me'alma. Okay? Yeah. So eitvei, Rava Rav Nachman. So asks Rava to Rav Nachman, Yachol shutav sheganav mechavero. Right? You would have thought to say that when you have a shutaf that steals from his friend, v'shutafim sheganvu, or shutafim that steal, you chayavim, they're going to be chayavim. Tamulumar comes teach you utvacho. What does it mean utvacho? Kulo bainan. The entire thing we need it. Veleka. And we don't have that. Elam Rav Nachman, but rather Rav Nachman comes and he says, Lakashia, it's not a question. Kan b'shutav shetavach ledat chavero. Here we're talking about a shutaf that he did the tvicha al dat chavero, meaning that the other one knew about it. Okay, that means he told them, go do the tvicha. So that's why it's like the tvichat ganav. So therefore, that's why he's going to be obligated to pay the arba v'chamisha. Okay, and it's considered that he also was part of the tvicha. The other one was that he did the tvicha shelo ledat chavero. Okay, fine. By Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah comes and he asks the following question: Mechara chutz mishloshim yom, or chutz mimlachta. When you sell, right, an animal, and this is going to be outside of the 30 days or outside of the melacha, which means, right, that it's going to be for the first 30 days, it's going to still belong to you. Or except for melacha, meaning he's not allowed to do melacha. So you sold it, but he cannot do melacha. Or chutz miubara, or you sold it, but it doesn't belong, the ubar belongs to you. Meaning if it becomes pregnant, it belongs to you. So 3 different cases. Either the first 30 days belong to you, the melacha belongs to you, okay, or the ubar, the fetuses belong to you. So what's the halacha? Do you say that that's considered that you sold it? Because you have to sell the entire thing, or not? So liba de mandamar, according to the mandamar that says ubar yerech imohu, that an ubar is part of the mother. Lo tibay lecha obviously is not the question because he left something over. Ki tibay lecha, what are we dealing with? Right? Aliba de mandamar, according to the mandamar that he says ubar is lav yerech imohu, that the ubar is not part of the mother. Okay, so what's halacha? Meimar amrina, do we say that since it's connected, it's considered a shiur? Or dilmar, maybe given the mefrash minekai, since the ubar at the end of the day is going to separate, it's not considered a shiur. So ika de amri, there are those that say, given the lav yerechimo, since ubar is lav yerechimo, lo have a shiur. It's not considered a shiur. Yeah, it's not considered a shiur. Or dilmar, maybe given the tzrich l'shterui ba'adav shrita, since at the end of the day you still have to permit it with shchita on itself, so it's like as if it was shiur. So take it. We don't have an answer. En lanu tshuva. Zot omeret, if you come, right, and the entire concept, if you sold an animal, but you still have the ubar, it's not there. So by Rav Papa asked the following question: Ginava, kital mechara. What happens if you stole it and you cut off the leg, and then you sold it? What's halacha? Do we say my deganavavi hay lo zabin? Whatever you stole, you didn't sell. Or dimar, do we say mad zabin haloshier? Whatever you sold, you left nothing open over. So answers the Gemara, take. Right? Again, we have the same take.